and his wife Katie moved here from Flemington the year before the fire, and they bought a 3-story building at 39 Bridge Street, and that's where Modern Love Gift Shop is now. Okay, so that would be right here. Okay, they operated a restaurant and bakery on the ground floor, and they and their children lived upstairs. And they also bought a rental house on Lower Bridge Street, which is one of these. Okay, so they're investing heavily in property that's going to be up in smoke. Okay, can I see the Williams, the next picture? Okay, now another building. This is the Williams building. Okay, this is a before and after. Albert Williams bought this building, and this building is where Early Bird Espresso is. Some old timers call it the Hummer building. Okay. Anyway, you can see a lot of steps to get up into the store. Well, when Albert Williams, who was a druggist, when he bought the building, he remodeled it like 3 months before the fire, and it was a big remodeling. The roof line is different. To eliminate all those steps to get up into the store, they actually lowered the floors. Okay, and they put in big plate glass windows and really modernized it. Okay. Okay. Now back to the next one. Back to the map. Okay. Okay. So anyway, in March, 2 months before the big fire, Levi Abel, right here, added a barber chair to his eatery, which made it a very strange combination. And William Srope moved his legal office into the Williams newly acquired building. Just like that building has now, there's sort of a straggle of things before. This is where William Srope had his office. In May, 1 month before the fire, the Hunterdon Independent reported that the interior of the American Temperance House Hotel was being painted and papered. Okay, and that was right here. That was where the Blue Mule is now. But that was a good-sized hotel, and a lazy person like myself, that really got to me. The painting and the papering that was all going to burn up. Okay. And a guy named A.A. Schofield opened a photographic studio in the Williams building upstairs from the drugstore. Okay. Now, next picture.
Why was a hotel called the Temperance House? Just
because they didn't serve liquor.
They did not.
The lower hotel near the bridge and the National Hotel, they served liquor, and there was a very heavy, strong temperance movement in town. And so they decided they would try that. So now this is the Frenchtown Press printing office. This was the first newspaper to open in Frenchtown in 1868. And that's Charles Joyner. I think he moved his head when they were taking his picture, and it kind of looks kind of strange. But anyway, he was the guy who was always warning, we gotta have a fire engine. And then once the Vigilant proved to be a fizzle, he said, we gotta have a steam fire engine. We gotta get a good one. He struggled along with his printing office and his newspaper for 10 years, but he had competition. Frenchtown was a tiny town. It didn't have a population of 1,000 yet. And the Hunterdon Independent came along, and so these two guys were beating each other's brains out for hardly any business. So Charles Joyner decided that he was going to give up. So he let his fire insurance lapse, and he was advertising to sell off all his printing presses and other equipment. And he had an auction like 2 weeks before the big fire. Nobody bought his stuff, so he was stuck with all his stuff and no fire insurance. And when the big fire came, as a journalist, he did not even have the grim pleasure of seeing the fire. He was away in Trenton on business, and so it was a total washout for him. And he could have said I told you so, and he did, but didn't help him much. So, okay. Okay, now it's time to light it up. Next picture. Okay, now this was the home that you might recognize this as the former funeral home on Bridge Street, which is currently the Rock Art Revival place. And I took that picture a couple days ago. But in 1878, it was the home of Dr. Emmanuel Deemy. That's Deemy. His wife Josephine, and they had two sons, John and Charles. They were 12 and 16. They all lived there. He practiced medicine there. And the fire started in his stable. Right behind his house, there was a little woodshed and ice house. And then behind that was a cluster of stables. There were 3 horses there, and carriages and other equipment. And Dr. Deemy's cow was there too. And it was just before 1 o'clock on Saturday, June 29th, 1878. Fire broke out in his stable. Okay, we'll get to the cause later, which remains a mystery, but arson is a likely bet. So, but there are other theories that are quite interesting. So anyway, the first people to see the fire were Sarah Slack and Thisbe Hyde. Thisbe Hyde was the owner of the American Temperance House, which was also a boarding house. So when she saw the fire, she rang the dinner bell and ran through the hotel, ringing the bell to wake everybody up. And then she ran outside and ran down the street, ringing the bell, yelling "Fire! Fire!" So people were well alerted. Dr. Deemy ran out of his house in his nightshirt and rescued his cow, but the horse was already engulfed in flames. He couldn't save the horse. The banker saved his horse, and anyway, 2 horses died in the fire. The vigilant pumper was run out, and it was not having one of its good days. It did nothing. They couldn't get it to work. So the telegrapher sent a message to Lambertville. It said, "Send us an engine quick." And then the mayor sent one to Phillipsburg, which also had railroad connections and fire engine, and said, "Send engine quick, whole town on fire." Now Lambertville responded quickly. They put a steam pumper on a flat car, and they had it up by 2:36. And they arrived and poured water onto this building. Now this is one of the few buildings that was made of stone. Underneath that stucco is stone. That's part of the reason it's still there. It didn't burn up. The Lambertville Fire Company, it's the first thing they did was pour water on that because they knew they couldn't save the other stuff. But they poured water on that, and then when Levi Abel's building, which was right here, when it was ready to collapse, they got poles and pushed it so it collapsed onto itself instead of onto this. So now, okay, let's go to the next one with that again. Okay.
So how many minutes did it take them to send that steam?
Actually, I think I might have that number.
From Lambertville?
By the time they got the pumper on the railroad flat car to the arrival here, it took 19 minutes.
Wow.
16 miles in 19 minutes. Those old trains were fast.
That's great.
You would think they wouldn't be since it was so long ago, but they were fast. So anyway, now here's how the fire spread. That's where it started. That's Dr. Deemy's barn. Okay? Now right here was what they called it a spoke works. They made wagon wheels out of oak and hickory. They had tons of wood on hand, partly for building materials and partly finished wagon wheels ready to go out. So the fire spread into there, And then it just spread in all directions from there. Right here, that was the bank. The bank was on 2nd Street. It caught fire. The bank officials were they put the money in a safe. They put important papers in boxes, and they were, running them out to safety. There was a lot of salvaging going on. There were two things going on. One was there were very inefficient attempts to stop the fire, mostly with buckets and ladders, wetting down all the neighboring buildings, and just like when Galasso's Pizzeria burned down. By the time the fire company got there, which was quick, there was no saving Galasso's. Okay, so they put all their attention and 60,000 gallons of water on the Frenchtown Cafe, which they did save, although it was pretty wet. So that was a lot of that. People were dousing their homes with water, pulling up carpets, draping it over the hot part of the house, and throwing more water on. And the other thing that was going on were salvage operations, just like the bankers trying to save what they could from the bank. There were people who, the Hummers, okay, now George Hummer and his wife, they had this shop right here. It was a combination furniture store and undertaking establishment, which was that was an old combination in those days, because I mean, what is a coffin but a cabinet, So they would make coffins there too. So anyway, they lived over on 2nd Street on the edge of the fire, and their house was in danger of burning. No one knew how big the fire was going to be. So if you lived anywhere near there, you were trying to save your family heirlooms and valuables and furniture and whatever you could do. So some of the people were fighting the fire. Some of the people were trying to salvage their goods. Now the Hummers, they already knew that their furniture store was doomed, but they thought their house might or might not be doomed. So they were taking furniture out, bringing it to farther away. Now he was either 13 months old or 16 months, but he was a toddler named Charles. And they're trying to move things out of the house, and they're dealing with Charles at the same time. So they handed him off to a girl, babysitter, I guess. And so she took Charles away, and they continued. Now after the fire was under control, they went looking for the girl, and they found her. She didn't have Charles.
Oh, no.
So that was an item of mystery for a few hours. We'll get to that later. So the fire spread here. Okay, this was the spoke factory. That was the bank. This was a house that had been converted into the office for the spoke factory. This was the Pittenger's house. That burned up. Some of these are barns and things, but here's the American Hotel.